Welcome to Mind Your Heart podcast, your favorite corner of the internet where we chat about all things mental health. I'm Emily.
And I'm Trina. Together, we're like your real-life Lorelai and Rory Gilmore. Each week, we'll bring you real conversations about the world of mental health, and we will peel back layers on topics like anxiety, depression, and much more.
We're here to chat with you about the tough stuff, the everyday stuff, and everything in between. So grab your emotional support water bottle, I know we have ours, find your comfiest chair, or keep your eyes on the road, and let's get into it. Are you ready, Mom?
Absolutely. Join us as we mind our hearts and hopefully make minding yours a little easier. Hey.
Hi.
Welcome back to Mind Your Heart.
Thanks for welcoming me.
Well, we're trying to get our groove here. We're trying to figure out how we want to come into our episodes. So you're going to take that journey with us, and maybe you'll even give us some feedback.
Yeah, or some ideas.
Really
yeah. Like, how do you want us to address you? Yeah. Hello, friend.
I know.
Here we are.
Because I think I mentioned on the introduction episode that I have two podcasts, and one that is for teachers and one that's for teacherpreneurs. And I'm always like, hey, into after the music plays.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's our thing. So I think we're going to figure that out. But anyway, today's episode is all about, we kind of want you to get to know us a little bit and to kind of hear our, like, where we're coming from. And so we're going to focus on like our journey, our story, and share a bit about that for the next two episodes. So that'll be this episode, and then next week's episode will be a continuation, more of a focus on Emily's perspective. And so it's a little vulnerable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know, I'm a little nervous.
Welcome to our open counseling session.
Yeah.
This is all about us.
Yes.
We have massive egos. Here we go. Just kidding. That was a joke.
No, that does. Yeah, it kind of sounds like that. Okay. So do you want to like ask me questions? You want me to just kind of introduce myself a little bit?
I can ask you questions.
Okay.
So like, yeah, I guess the classic interview question is, tell me a little bit about yourself, Trina.
All right. Well, my name is Trina Debery, and I am a single mom, but with two grown kids. I'm an empty nester. I do have a dog baby. Fur baby. His name is Kobe, and he's the best dog in the world.
Kobe Franklin Debery.
He's the greatest. And I'm just an empty nester for a year. So I have my sweet Emily, who is 24, and
I almost thought you were gonna say 22 for some reason.
Yeah. No.
And in my head, I was like, how old am I? Like, I forgot how old I was for a second.
24. You're 24.
Yeah.
Yeah.
24.
So my sweet Emily, when Emily left, that was hard. It was a hard transition. The thing that made that okay was that I took her bedroom and made it into my office. So that was actually a win.
Yeah.
But it was a difficult transition. And she also took the cat. My cat
okay.
Tebow.
All right. Wait, pause. Hold on here. I didn't think I was taking the cat. You told me to take Tebow.
I didn't tell you to take Tebow.
Yes, you did.
I asked you if you wanted to take Tebow.
Oh, no. No.
Really?
Yeah, really. Because I was like fully assuming that she was going to stay with you. And then you were like, so like you're taking Tebow, right? And I was like, I didn't think I was taking her. And then you had said, well, she just like loves you and Jake so much. Like, I think it would be best if she went with you.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like, are you sure about that? And then you said yes. So this was your idea. I really did not expect to take her. I thought she was staying with you.
I don't remember. It does sound familiar when you say it that way, but I don't know. I think what I might have been thinking was that it was going to be really hard for me for you to go, and so I didn't think I could bear watching it be hard for Tebow. And so I thought, I don't want to do that to Tebow or to Emily. So I thought that would probably be the better choice. I didn't realize how much I would miss Tebow and how hard, like how her physical presence made me feel. And so I was like, really, that was really hard. That was like a double whammy. I had already, like, Jake had moved in.
Yeah.
And so I was already feeling that separation that you kind of feel with your adult children. And it had already been going on for a while. So it wasn't as abrupt as it was when my son Jackson left.
Yeah, because it was like more of a transition.
Yeah, it was a transition. And also we went through your senior year and you graduated and
we like knew that I was planning to move out. Whereas like Jackson, we didn't know if he was going to go to college or not. Like that was kind of like it was like a month that he decided that.
Yeah,
and, like,
it was
boom.
like he came home one day, which I guess is a part of my story. Like he all right, so I kind of feel like I have to explain that part.
Yeah.
But he came home. He was working on a construction site. Jackson stopped going to high school in 10th grade, and it was hard. It was a hard thing to come.
And you were a teacher.
And I was a teacher. I was a teacher since 1997. I left teaching in 2018 and was working full-time on my business where I create resources for teachers with a focus on comprehension and makerspace and STEM and science. And I don't know what I was saying.
You were talking about Jackson leaving high school.
So I was a lifelong educator, and so it was a really rough to have him not want to be in school. I know he hated school. He's always hated school. School's always been a difficult thing for him. And so
school wasn't fair to him.
No, school wasn't fair to him. School definitely was not fair to him. And Jackson's dad and I got divorced when Jackson was 10. Yeah. So we had a very hard time. Jackson and I had a really hard time. We went through a period where Jackson was really angry with me and really upset. And he didn't speak to me for a period of time. He was just at his dad's. It was very, very difficult.
Like I didn't even really see him during that time. And he was still in high school, like when he wasn't talking to you. That was like, and when he wasn't talking to you, like there was like he needed somebody to pick him up because dad couldn't like all the time. So that was really the only time I got to see him was when I like drove to pick him up from school and then just take him back to dad's. Yeah. So like I didn't even see him during that time either.
Yeah. It was hard. He was in a dark place too. He was playing video games until all hours of the night, and he was just an unhappy teenager. And his dad and I, we did not see eye to eye on what was the best thing for him. So it was hard. It wasn't like I just was, said, well, he's not going to school. Like I was upset. Yeah. But then I really embraced the idea of homeschooling him because I wanted to give him an opportunity to change his mind. So I registered him as a homeschool student. I did a lot of research and reading about unschooling and allowing children to learn in their natural timeline. I got involved with some homeschool groups. So I did a lot of focusing on that and trying to understand. And what Jackson was clearly doing was unschooling. Mm-hmm. Like every aspect of school he was having nothing to do with it.
This was kind of after I had decided that I wasn't going to college too, right?
Yeah.
So it was like you got
a double
whammy. Let me serve you a plate of uneducation to a teacher, a longtime teacher
who loved
teaching and loved learning and like really like believed in that for kids. Yeah. So like both of your kids were like,
no, I don't want anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anything to do with what you dedicated your life to. Part of the reason I chose that profession was because I wanted to do something that made a difference for children. And also, I wanted to be home with my own children. Mm-hmm. And that was a huge part of picking that profession. Yeah. And then it ended up like kind of hurting me as a mom because I was so tired all the time. And I didn't want to have other people's kids over sometimes because I didn't want to deal with it. I wanted to have some space that was sacred. Yeah. And so it didn't end up being as easy as I thought it was going to be with teaching. And, in fact, you lived at school with me.
Yeah.
And that there was like lots of late nights where, and then I left you in the after school care, and I focused on school. And then even in the summer, I worked on school. And so I really feel like it was actually like it didn't go the way that I had intended. And it definitely didn't go that way with my children in school. But what I do know about both of you is that I have full confidence in your ability to make decisions and to find your way. And so that's the part that I really held on to really closely. And so I did embrace the unschool and homeschool, and I did start to understand things in a different way. And I allowed Jackson the space that he needed because I had no choice. Like I had no choice. He was away from me. I would just text him periodically and tell him how much I loved him and that I was there with open arms. If he when and if he ever wanted to come home, he had a place at home. And I just held on to that as much as I could. And I prayed all the time, and I was very sad, and it was a really hard time. But then he eventually came home.
I honestly think that was probably like one of the biggest lessons that like you taught him though in that time. And obviously like I can't speak for Jackson. I'm not speaking for Jackson, but from what I've heard that he's said, and like the way even recently, like when we did those affirmations for you, like through the mindset thing that you were doing, like the thing that came up for him and for me was like the unconditional love that you have always shown us, like no matter what. And I think that was like such a massive lesson for him in that moment, because everything he was doing was conditional. It was like sports was conditional on his physical health all the time, and like how he performed, and then school was conditional on how he showed up when he couldn't help that he had specific learning disabilities that no one was paying attention to. His friends were conditional on if he was making this decision or that decision, and like even through our dad, like there was conditions. So like it was like you were the constant like unconditional love that he had seen, and I feel like he like needed that. And like even though that period of time where you weren't talking was not ideal, and obviously like if we could go back in time and unwish that to happen, like that would be what we would choose. But like in the same way, it came out of it him being able to learn what unconditional love feels like, and knowing that he can accept it even when he feels angry or upset or whatever. Like he can still feel his feelings and be loved as well.
Yeah. I felt like that was really important. I also wanted to show him a different way of behaving, because I felt like, I mean, his dad and I got divorced. It was an emotionally abusive marriage. It was an unhealthy marriage that I stayed in for a very long time. And I wanted him to see that there was another way. I wanted both of you to see that there was another way of behaving and living your life. And so I just tried to stay as open as possible. And I also thought of like that story in the Bible where, you know, it's like the prodigal son returns, and you have to have a complete open heart and open mind. And so I did. And then he did come back to me, and our relationship is so different now. Like he is, I just adore him, and I know that he loves me like deeply. And I mean, it is so different. And we also like we went through some hard times. Like we had to adjust with each other. I found it really easy to slip back into the dysfunction that I had with your dad. I felt like it would happen with Jackson, because Jackson like takes on some of those characteristics at times, and they would trigger me, and so we would trigger each other. And then it was like, but we learned to communicate differently, which is something I never was able to figure out with your dad. But with Jackson, like we would just adjust just a bit, and it would go in a different direction. And it was like, it made such a difference. I mean, we're not perfect. We're still like every once in a while.
Is.
But it was just such, it was, I don't know, it was really life-changing. And then Jackson got a job at Subway, and Jackson was like, you know, coming out of his funk. And starting to like explore the other parts of himself. Like he's got a really high emotional intelligence. He's very aware of people's feelings, and he doesn't have, like, he got things from both of us.
And he's a very hard worker. Like,
yeah.
He like really dedicates himself.
Yeah.
Like that was like shown immensely when he was working at Subway.
Yeah,
I mean, he was working the same amount of hours as a manager, and that was his first job.
That was his first job. Yeah. And so he did that, and then he went to work on a construction site. His dad helped him get the job. His dad is in that line of work, and runs a company. And Jackson, like, it was grueling. He would come home from the job site filthy dirty, exhausted. It was an exhausting
very tan
job. Yes, very tan. And so then one day he came home and said, I want to go to college. And this wasn't that long ago. And then I'm like, all right, well, you got to get your GED first. And I'm thinking it's going to take a while. It didn't. He got it like right away. Had to take math, I think, twice, maybe 3 times.
I feel like it took him like less than 2 months.
Yeah, it was really fast.
Yeah.
I mean, he passed everything else right away, which was, I was shocked.
Yeah.
And then he applied to a college in Gainesville and got accepted, and it was all crazy. And then he was gone. So that empty nest was not what I was expecting.
Because there was no transition.
There was no
easing you into that. Because we didn't even think he wanted to go to college.
Yeah.
Like, he was just working. Like, there was no thought or conversation really about, like, I want to...
I knew he wanted a different life.
He wanted to do more.
Yeah,
but we didn't know when. We didn't know what path that looked like. Like,
yeah, he definitely, like, we had some foreshadowing of where he was like, I got to get out of this town. I got to be more than this. I don't want to be stuck here. And he would have these moments of revelation. And I'm like, this kid's got to do something. He's going to do something. He's going to figure it out. And so, he's in college, and it's not super easy for him. He's like struggling, had to take some things more than once, but he is like learning such a different life that I'm not even as concerned about like when he graduates or if he figures that part out. I love the experiences he's getting and the people that people that are totally different than he is, that he's meeting, and like his roommate, like they're good friends, but they're complete opposites. And I love that he gets to experience these things and like just grow up in a different way. Yeah. So I'm excited about that for him, and he'll figure it out. And I believe that about both of you. I'm like, you'll figure it out. And he
also did it afraid. Like,
yeah, he did it afraid.
He was scared.
Yeah, he was scared to death.
And he did it anyways. And that was another thing that like you had taught us, like that. Like I definitely I noticed that right away. But I think like he like almost like soaked it in and then like had to like live it out, and then he was like, okay, like I can do this afraid. Like that was something that you used to say to me all the time. Like I'd be like, I'm scared, and you'd be like, well, then we're gonna do it scared. Like you don't have to not be scared. That's like bad advice. When people say that, like, oh, just don't be scared. Like I hate when people say that, because it's like, well, that's not changing anything. It's like when people say like, well, don't be sad. Like, oh,
just put on a happy face.
Thanks. Yeah. Fixed. Like that's not how it works.
No.
But like just doing it that way anyways was like a massive lesson that you had taught us in so many different ways. I mean, like even like leaving like a relationship that you had been in for so long, that you had 2 kids with, like that was scary. Like it's not like
terrifying. Yeah.
And we didn't have like all this money ready to just leave and be like, all right, we're good. Like it was like you had to really like rely on people, and like you weren't used to doing that. Like you are a very independent person. And so I feel like, I don't know, like that was something that like we both like took from you, is like being able to like just do it afraid and then like make something out of it.
Wow. I mean, I appreciate that, because, you think that you're doing all these things and making these mistakes, and you don't see some of your choices and how they impact your children. Also because you're not, sometimes they don't tell you. Sometimes you don't know. Yeah. And so I appreciate that so much. And I know that Jackson, he has said the same thing. I think I don't know if he sees me leaving as something that I did afraid or that I did in a brave way. I think there's still some resistance when it comes to that.
Yeah. I think he definitely has a much different perspective, and like again, like I don't know what that
and
perspective is.
he wants
like,
to come on and talk. So
really?
Yeah.
Cool. Oh,
yeah.
That would be good.
Yeah.
And
so,
I don't know. I know it was much different for him than it was for me. It was like two totally different. Like if you were to watch it in a movie, like the movies would be two different movies.
Two totally different movies.
But I think there was also
3 different movies.
Yeah. I mean, like, all 4 of us, like,
4,
had different experiences. It's just the reality of life, really, is the perspective of everyone is different.
Yeah.
But I also think, like, that it doesn't go unnoticed that you, even though he didn't want you to leave, at least that's what my perception of how he felt was. Maybe that's not true.
Jackson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He still saw you do something that you decided was best for you and all of us, and that you were afraid, and that you did it anyways. And then you continued after that to make decisions that were scary and like do those afraid too. So like for me, like the big one was like leaving, but like I also like that's not the only thing.
No,
because
like,
you did so many things.
Jackson's thing that he references is me leaving teaching.
Yeah.
And I was terrified. I'm like, how am I going to... I pulled out my retirement, which was, not financially wise. Yeah. And I bet on myself. Yeah. And I was scared to death. How am I going to take care of these 2 kids? Because I had $125 a month for support. That's it. So I had no support. And
Here's
was like...
one person's half groceries.
Exactly. And so I'm like, how am I going to do this? And I needed my business income as a supplement to my teaching income. So now I had to come up with my teaching income and the supplement. Yeah. And so it was super overwhelming and scary. And I did that. And then I actually and I say failed. I don't mean fail as in...
I think you can say failed, though.
I failed.
Because I was talking to... the women that I went on the retreat with recently. I went on a retreat to Bali, and we did like a reconnection call, and one of the facilitators of the retreat was like, yeah, like I feel like we've kind of like failed in this motion to do like what they thought the business was gonna be, and they're like basically recreating it to be something different and like taking a little more time and what have you. Yeah. But I was like, the way that she had said it, she was like, yeah, like I failed, and like and I was like, well, let me like stop you for a second, because I mean, I did my graduation speech on this. Literally, I did my graduation speech on failure. Yeah. Like, good luck, we all failed. Yeah. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we've positioned failure, the word, as a negative, like more derogatory word, but like it's not. Because with failure, like without failure, there's no success.
There's no success, and there's no way of figuring out what's right. Or not right, but what is a different option. Yeah. And that
like
is
what works.
Yeah,
and
what
like
works.
what doesn't work.
Yeah.
If you don't fail, then like you don't know. Yeah. Like then what? Like everything just worked out for you? Like that kind of sounds like a boring ass life. Yeah. Sorry, but like it just does.
Yeah. So I did. Okay, so I failed. I couldn't make enough money. Or enough that, and I was in trouble. Yeah, I felt like I was in trouble. So I had to go back into the school system, or I felt like I had to go back in the school system. I don't really think that I had to. I think that I felt like I had to at the time. Fear was just ruling my thoughts.
And it was all you knew.
And it was all I knew. And but I did feel like I felt terrible about it. I felt so upset. I didn't want to. I resisted it. I went on the interview. I was like, I don't even care because I don't want this job. And I just laid it all out there. I just told them everything that I thought about education and how I thought and what I thought about teaching. And my principal loved it. Like, it was crazy. Yeah. My assistant principal wanted to hire her friend. So she was like, oh, great. She's answering it. Like you could tell that she was like, oh man. But so the principal called me like after the interview and was like, I want you to take this job. I don't want you to go somewhere else. And and it was the worst job I've ever had. Like, I was a student support specialist. It was hell.
Yeah.
It was hell. I was dealing with behavior problem after behavior problem all day long, every day. Teachers were angry. I wasn't used to teachers being angry with me. I usually was helping teachers and fighting for teachers. And I'm like, I felt like I was fighting against teachers in this case. And it was so upsetting and so awful.
Yeah.
And then
You like got sick.
yeah, I did. I was like so stressed.
Like physically
because I also have an autoimmune disease. I have I don't have RA. It tested negative, but I have a positive ANA, so it's basically is RA. So they treat it like a RA, and it's pretty much in remission at this point. But it flares up with stress. So it was just it was just a really hard time. And then the pandemic happened, which was felt like a blessing to me. I know it's not a blessing, and it was terrible for so many people. And I feel
but it was a blessing for some people.
You're right. And I guess you feel guilty about that in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, but like that's the same thing. Like that's the way that the world is.
Yeah.
There are so many things that like are not great for some people and are really great for other people. And that doesn't make it like good for the people it's bad for.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make it bad for the people it's good for.
Yeah.
It's just different.
No, you're right. So I got to help teachers online. I got to help parents. I got to help kids. I got to meet kids every day and have like the best conversations with them. Sometimes just meet for lunch and like sit on the computer together. And and then I also figured out how to work from home because that was what was lacking the first time. Yeah. So I really focused on my business. I also was part of a conference that we did online. It was called STEMCon. It was incredible. It was like educators that are excited about innovation and inquiry and hands-on and outside the box thinking. And it was like all my people in one place. And it was the best experience. And so there were so many good things that were happening. And then my business, like you came to help me with my business, and we made like 100 products.
Which is basically how I started my business.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Which is so crazy. And because we're going to talk about Emily's story as well. And
so there's a little teaser for you.
So come back next week. Mind your heart next week. So it was... and then it grew, like my business grew, and it was like a game changer. And then I did stay at that school the next year. I came back after COVID, and I was the media specialist, which was much better.
Yeah, I was gonna say that year wasn't great, but it was better.
It wasn't great because I had a really nasty micromanaging assistant principal. If it hadn't been for her, I could have done that job. Yeah. I could have continued doing that job because I
loved the kids.
I loved the kids, and I was having fun. Like I was focused on getting kids excited about reading.
Yeah,
kids were reading.
Like, that's your shit.
Yeah, kids were reading while they were walking in the hallways. Yeah. People who didn't even like me were like, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?" It was unbelievable. And then I had the best news crew, and it was so fun. But I knew that she wasn't going to be able to stay out of my business, and she didn't. And then they were going to put me on the rotation, and then I was like, you know what? I think I'm done. I think I need to be done again. Yeah. So I quit again, and it was both times were like a grieving process because it felt like I was leaving a part of myself behind because it was something that I was actually really good at. Yeah. And sometimes I want to tell people in my present life, like, I was a really good teacher, but yeah. And I'm like, that makes me feel kind of sad because it's a part of me that it's different. It's like changed.
A muscle you don't get to hands-on exercise anymore. Yeah. Like you're doing it through someone else, really, because you still are an incredible teacher. Like you'll never not be an incredible teacher. It's just that you're doing it differently. Yeah, it's
so different. Yeah. So now I'm making things for teachers, and I am hoping to help them inspire a deep love of learning. That's what I'm very passionate about. I want kids to love to learn. I think it will make the difference. And
Well, it's always been about the kids for you.
Yeah.
That's the difference of like doing what you're doing now, is that you can't see that.
Can't see it. I can see it in feedback when people,
For sure.
and I get so happy when they tell me that their kids love it. Like I'm like, I'm glad the teacher likes it too, because I want to be helpful.
Yeah.
But I also just love when they tell me that the kids love it. That just, I don't know, that makes such a huge difference. But I don't know, like that part of me, you know, it has changed so much. And I also didn't realize how much I miss like physical connection. Like, you know, I'm home by myself with my dog, and, you know, your body like kind of yearns for physical touch.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in an inappropriate way. I mean,
well, I mean, like, sexual physical touch isn't inappropriate.
no,
either.
You're right.
In a sexual way.
You're right.
You mean?
No, I don't mean it that way.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I'm saying you don't mean it.
Yeah,
in
I don't mean it
sexual
that way.
You mean it in just like the act of being touched and loved and
when kids, you know, swarmed, you know, on you, like, you know, all jumped up at one time and hugged you, and like little kindergartners, like thinking you were a superhero. That is such a great feeling.
Yeah, you feel like a rock star.
Yeah, you do feel like a rock star, you know, walking down the halls and the kids are excited. It is a good feeling, and I miss those hugs and that connection, and that part has been a struggle. So, but you know, I also know that I can't be in a school system, you know, my health, my mental health, like I'm just too frustrated with what we're doing in schools. The whole idea of standardized crap and testing, and you know, they tell us to differentiate and then we have to standardize. That doesn't even make sense. I could go on and on about that. I won't. But so I have a lot of frustration towards a system that I think is not,
it's a systemic issue.
it is a systemic issue, and it's not good for teachers, and it's not good for children.
Yeah.
And it makes me angry, and so I get angry, and so that is you know, part of it. But anyway, so I mean, did I like, is there anything that I left out about I mean, I was married for 17 years. Like, I married the person that I fell in love with when I was 18, 19 years old. I had a really low confidence. I didn't think I deserved better or to be respected, I guess. I mean, I look back and I'm like, there's so many things that I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what was I thinking? And that was one thing that I tried so hard, especially with you as a daughter. I wanted you to like believe in yourself, and then it didn't always translate that way, and like you to feel good about your body and yourself and your in your own skin and your confidence to do things. And I don't think it translated that way. I think sometimes like you know, there's things that happened that I know you'll talk about next week that I just am like, oh, like.
But at the same time, like I get what you're saying, and like I know, like I hear like that I know that that's hard for you, and that like whenever even I talk about like how it was perceived for me like growing up, that it's hard for you. But at the same time, like you have to think about like that's not just like you. Like there's like a line of things like in like generations of like taught and like not even just generationally but like society wise like the way that we're taught to look at ourselves, love ourselves, dislike ourselves as women specifically is like you can't put all of that just on you.
No,
and also like
you're
you
right.
didn't necessarily have the resources
No, that's true.
to know differently. And like so like whenever you think about that, like I don't blame you. Like there's not like blame that I put on you. I think that there is like there's just so much to it. Like it's not just that black and white. Like there's so much gray to that. And like I also don't want you to hold like that blame.
Okay.
Because like you're taking on generations worth of trauma and
the
societal norms that have been taught over decades and decades. Like that's not.
No, you're right.
That's not on you.
All right. Well, anyway, so I did.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's all right. I just don't think I valued myself enough, anyway, we ended up getting married. We were married for 17 years. I stayed for a long time because I honestly thought that I thought he was a good dad. And I thought that you both really loved him and that it would be really confusing for you. But then I also think I was also really scared, and I was also very codependent, I guess. I hate that word. But I didn't want to leave. Like, I didn't want to not be married. I wanted to be married.
Yeah.
And I wanted him to love all of us. I didn't, I wanted him to be healthy. Like, drinking and things like that were really difficult. And a lot of our relationship changed because when I had you, which I've told you before, you changed my life. You were a gift. You were what I prayed about and wanted my whole life. And I remember thinking, even when your dad and I were dating, that I'm like, if we break up, I'll have to meet someone else. We'll have to fall in love. When will I ever have a baby? Yeah. Like, the baby part was I wanted a baby so badly. Yeah. But I thought I was going to give you like an example of love, but I didn't understand that wasn't like pure good love. And that there was a lot of conditions with it. And but I wanted to be better. Like, I would, like, have some drinks and whatever with him, and there's no judgment there. But I didn't want you guys growing up in a house. I didn't want you to grow up in a house like that.
Yeah, and I think you're saying there's no judgment for people who do, like, drink, like, socially, like, of course there's not.
Yeah.
But, like, the thing that I think where you're coming from is that, like, that's not who you were or wanted to be.
Yeah.
It's not something you actually really enjoyed. It's not something that really made you feel good. And you were doing it because you felt pressured.
Yeah, almost like a peer pressure.
He
would get mad when I didn't want to.
I mean, he really was an undiagnosed alcoholic. I don't know anymore. But
I don't know either.
Yeah. So, like, when you're, and also, like, I'm sure subconsciously there's probably a part of you that's like, if I do this thing that I'm not comfortable really doing, that I don't really like doing, I'm also kind of enabling the behavior that I also don't want.
I don't want. Yeah. But he's nicer to me sometimes, but sometimes
it's
not.
Like a hit or miss. Yeah.
So you just never knew.
Yeah.
So you're right. It wasn't something that I wanted necessarily to do, that I ever really wanted to do. I mean, even when I was a teenager, doing that. So
drinking sucks.
I mean, it makes me feel terrible the next day. Like, I have, and I don't mean sick. I mean, like, mentally depressed.
Yeah. Well, it's a depressant. So.
Yeah. And I have depression and anxiety and ADD and dyslexia. So it really messed me up. Yeah. And so
and you're allergic to yeast.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So you're literally allergic to alcohol.
Yeah. It's like, the swelling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you came along, I wanted to be better. I wanted to be a better mom. I wanted to be a better person. I wanted to raise you in this ideal whatever, and I just wanted better for you. I had, like, visions of, like, my family was a broken family. I didn't want you to have a broken family. And then I just kept wanting to be better, and that was conflicting with what our relationship was. So we didn't know how. And then there was a period of time where I really wanted to have a second baby, and I don't know if we were on the same page with that. Like, I got really, that's when I actually first started taking an antidepressant because I was so depressed about it. And it took a long time, and surgery and other whatever. And it was a hard thing to feel like you were going through by yourself, even though you were with a partner. So it was, I don't know. I mean, my brother said it was doomed from the start, and I remember feeling so insulted by that.
You guys were very opposite, though.
But we are very opposite.
You're like the complete opposite of each other.
Yeah.
Like,
and Jackson says that too. He's like, once he realized, he's like, oh, you guys never should have been together.
Yeah. I mean, like, even when you were, like, together and we were younger, like, I remember, like, we used to joke about it. Like, there would be things that were, like, it was, like, you were literally the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Like it was, like, almost a joke at that time. Like, oh, well, opposites attract, I guess. Like, but it's, like, you were very, very different in, like, everything. Like, and not even just in the, like, surface level things. Like,
and the way we thought about things. Politics.
Yeah. Like, the non-negotiable part of things was, like,
compatibility.
You were different.
Yeah, we were so different. We are so different. And, but I guess also there was, like, a false sense of security with him. Yeah. I felt like I ran to him and I seeked, like, protection and comfort and, like, him to take care of things. And
Which is where you guys clicked.
Yeah.
Though. Because he craved doing that.
Yeah.
That was what he wanted to do for anyone.
Yeah.
He wanted to, because he didn't have that himself.
Yeah.
Like, he wanted to be the protector and, like, be, like, the
provider.
Yeah, like, the man, like, quote unquote. I hate when people say that, but that was how he was raised.
No, you're
and that's
right.
what he thought.
So that is when, and then when I became
compatible.
More independent at times,
it was, like, hurtful.
It was hurtful. You're right. And now it makes sense. That actually makes more sense. Like, no wonder. Yeah.
And it was, like, the one way that you clicked. It was like, oh, shit. Like, well, this is not here. Like, what do we do with this?
Yeah. And he didn't, like, he
and
knocked
so he was
me
trying
down.
To force it on you instead.
He would knock me down. I don't mean physically, but mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really was after, like, starting counseling myself, after my grandmother died and one of my friends died very young. I remember having what felt like a nervous breakdown in our house. And I was like, and my mom was like, you need to go to a women's resource center and you need to talk to someone.
I didn't know Nanny was the one that told you
that. Nanny's the one that told me that.
Wow.
And I put it off for so long, probably years. And then one day it was really bad. And I was like, I do. And I called and I made an appointment and I met Jane. And everything changed. I mean, it wasn't as simple as that.
Yeah.
It was a long time of counseling. And I didn't even realize, like, she didn't tell me, you're in an emotionally abusive marriage. I didn't know that. For a while.
Yeah.
We worked together for a long time before I realized, I was like, why is she sharing these resources with me? Why do I have to watch these videos? Why am I, like, and then I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You're talking about me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't know what to do with that. And I actually think that could be a separate episode, about.
For sure.
Because there's so much to talk about that.
There was a lot of steps that
There's a lot of steps. And also I, like, resisted feeling, I didn't want to be a victim, but I also have things to say about that too.
Yeah.
So my judgment of women, that's so unfair. So I feel like that would be
It's more of a judgment of yourself.
It is a judgment of myself. It definitely was a judgment of myself, but it definitely Jane responded to that because so that could be a whole nother episode. But I do think that I just felt like, and financially, I didn't know what I was going to do. It really was when TPT came along, that which is Teachers Pay Teachers, which is a marketplace for teacher authors to create things for teachers. It's kind of like an Amazon for teachers. Anyway,
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that was when I thought that there was any kind of hope.
Yeah, and
that I might be able to, like, stand on my own 2 feet, and so that's that's how that started. But that was hell as well. So, yeah. So basically, that's my story. Yeah. Yeah.
You thought you were getting the light one?
Yeah.
You were wrong.
You're wrong. We're just jumping right on in there. Yeah.
I think that's good, though. I don't know. I hate when people are, like, trying to do like the small talk garbage.
Yeah.
Like, if you're listening to this podcast, you're not here for like just shits and gigs. Like,
yeah.
We'll give you some of that, but
yeah,
you're here because you want to be heard and related to and hear somebody else's story too. So
yeah, yep. So, yeah.
And now, where are you?
Now, where am I? Now, I am on the other side of that, which is really, I didn't think it was possible. Mm-hmm. But I definitely dreamed about it, imagined it. I'm still single. It's been 10 years. And I think there's a part of me that's scared to date, partly because I'm free. Like, I feel free. And I didn't feel free for most of my life. Mm-hmm. And nobody can control me or tell me how to clean the microwave or where to put things in the refrigerator or what I have to do or what I can spend money on or any of that.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to tell me that my brain doesn't work and that I'm cold and dead inside and all the other things. So I don't want to take any chances is kind of how I feel. And also, like, I don't know if I know what real love looks like. And so I know so many people that have left their marriage and then ended up with the exact same kind of person. And I don't want that to happen. And also I think that I would be more compromising if I met the person and, and fell in love.
Yeah.
Because right now I don't feel like compromising at all. Mm-hmm. But I compromise for Kobe. Like, I make concessions for my dog. So, and you and Jackson. Yeah. So I know I'm capable of loving. Yeah. Like, I know that kind of love. Yeah. I just don't know, like, romantic love. And I'm kind of scared. And even like the intimate parts of a relationship, I'm kind of scared about that. Yeah. I mean, 10 years, that's a long time.
Yeah. Well, and then, like, before that, you spent 17 years with the same person.
Yeah, it was the same person. Yeah.
Married, just 17 years married. And then,
and all the years before that we were together.
Yeah. So, like, that's a long, that's like, you're basically like
my whole adult life.
Come-again virgin. Like,
yeah.
That's kind of probably how it feels, I'd imagine.
Yeah. No, it probably, it does feel like that. So it's a weird, so I, for the most part, like, most of the time I don't really feel lonely. I do miss, like I miss you. I miss doing stuff. I miss, like, having people around me. I miss having friends like I used to. I don't have friends like I used to. Some people didn't survive the transition of my life. And I used to feel like I was too much for people, but I'm not. I'm doing a lot of mindset work. And I'm not too much for people. I am exactly what I am. And for some people, it's too heavy, but that's their issue, not my issue. Yeah. And I'm sad. Like, I'm sad that I lost people along the way, people that really helped me and that I loved deeply. But I also understand that, like, as you grow, there's, like, growing pains. And so that's kind of where I am right now. I'm still really focused on building my business, and I want, like, it's been struggling for the last year and a half, and
as is the whole entire world,
as is the country. Yep. And so I'm working on that. I'm like putting one foot in front of the other. I'm trying to make some pivots, and I'm moving ahead. And I have a very supportive family, and I feel loved from my family. I don't feel like something's missing. I do know that I'm not happy with where I currently am, like, as far as living. I feel like there's supposed to be something different about that. Mm-hmm. It's
like the next phase, though.
Yeah.
It's like, I was kind of talking to Jake about this recently, is like because I was like, ugh, sometimes I'm like, I'm just tired of, like, it's like one fucking thing after the other.
Are we going to cuss on this podcast?
Well, I'm going to.
Okay.
So we're just going to have to make it explicit.
Okay.
But that's how it feels sometimes. It's like one thing after the other.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, at the same time, like, that's how it's going to be forever. Like, that is life.
Yeah.
Like, it is one thing after the other.
Yeah.
And it's just, like, being okay with, like, no, I've been watching it.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just being okay with whatever the next thing is. And, like, knowing that you can get to the next thing.
Yeah.
And, like, it was like you're going through all that, you went through all of that stuff you just talked about, and then there's been other things that have come along, and now it's like, all right, here's your next thing.
Yeah.
You're going to figure out where you
And
want to live,
do it
what you want
scared
to do.
again.
Yeah, and you'll figure it out, and it'll all work out. And it won't come with no trials and tribulations.
No, I know.
But
yeah, because if I were to go where I think I would rather be, like, then that means I'm away from you, and I'm away from Nanny, and I'm away from Jackson, and that doesn't seem right. That doesn't feel aligned.
But also, like, in this life that you're, like, picturing, like, you could have the means to fly back and forth, or have 2 houses, or, you know, like, who knows what that looks like.
And also,
like, don't limit your imagination.
Maybe the image vision board, maybe the house with the full grown trees, and maybe it doesn't have to be in Maine. Maybe it could be in Florida if I could find the right like spot.
Yeah.
So,
or maybe you have one in Maine and one in Florida.
Yeah. So
for when it gets
so
hot as
cold.
hell here,
and so hot here.
Yeah, cold there.
You're right. So we're that's to be determined.
Yeah.
TBD. TBD. So, yeah. That's a little bit about me.
You didn't know her before.
Yep.
You do now.
You do now, and you'll learn even more in the weeks to come. But also we want to offer this as a support to you as well. And there's going to be topics that we talk about that are specifically geared to focusing on us, not just focusing on us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that it's important that this is known about both of us.
Yeah.
Because one thing that I've found, like, with, like, my more recent clients that I'm working with is, like, I relate to them. Like, they chose me to be their coach because, like, they know that I've been through what they're trying to get through.
Yeah.
Like, I am no, like, anomaly. Like, I am where they are right now.
Yeah.
And, like, people need that.
I agree. I totally agree, because when I do coaching for DCA, for Digital Course Academy, I feel like the people that join with me, they know that, like, I'm not a super successful course creator yet. And but they know that I've been in the trenches.
Yeah.
And also there's things that I figured out, things that I tried that they could avoid. And also having been through it so many times, I know it. Like, I know, I'm supporting.
Yeah.
So you're right. So I think.
So, like, these first couple episodes, like, you'll be learning more about us.
Yeah.
But we don't have massive egos, so it won't continue to be just about us.
Yeah. So hold on. Hang in there with us. We'll get you through this part right here, and some of the topics we were talking about will be hard and heavy.
Yeah.
And but some things will be, really beautiful. And there always will be beauty in the tragedy anyway. So we hope that you mind your heart on Mondays, and you stay tuned.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.